Me?
You think this is funny?
In a cosmic sort of way, yes.
Well, Mr. Funny Man, is this how you get your sick kicks?
What? It's just an ordinary crabby. Oh my goodness!
Howdy everybody and welcome back to the Willie St. Willie channel once again. And today I have something rather special planned for you. Because today I'm not just doing an iceberg video. Oh no. I'm doing a Willie St. Willie classic, okay? A real throwback. This marks the return of the obscure cryptids iceberg. I don't know what to call it, the revenge of the obscure cryptids iceberg or the return, something like that. Some cheesy movie title I'm gonna give this video. But yes, that's right everyone, the obscure cryptids iceberg was one of the first videos I ever made on this channel. And the lovely creator of this iceberg decided to add another bonus level to it. A rather huge and bigly bonus level. And guys, if you're not sure how this works by now, basically what an iceberg chart is, it can cover a variety of topics, and it goes from the tippy top of the most widely known and surface level knowledge about whatever said topic is, down to the depths of what is the least well known and obscure about that said topic. And this iceberg just happens to cover cryptids, so yeah, there's a lot of variety here. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend you go back and watch the OG original obscure cryptids iceberg videos, or else you're just gonna be missing out on all the other spooky cryptozoology content. But if you want to stick around and watch this video, then you know, man, I don't care. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You're your own person, you know. Speaking of cryptids, hold up. I have my I'd rather be squatching hat to put on, so I'm going to wear that for this video. You know, I'm just now realizing that this hat is kind of small for my head, but whatever, man. I want Bigfoot to know I'm coming for him. And guys, as much as I like to, because of the amount of entries in this iceberg, I can't exactly go too much into depth with each individual entity or cryptid. So I'm gonna do a very broad surface level covering of each one, and we'll just see how far we get, okay? You guys, if there's some random folklore or cryptid that is happening to not be on this huge iceberg, well, I apologize. I mean, put it in the comment below, man. Maybe you get some eyes on it. People will learn about it. Who knows? All right, no more reindeer games. Without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off, we have the CT Ka. Basically, the CT Ka is more of an urban legend, native folklore, as it originates from Nevada with the Native American Peyote tribe. I think I pronounced that right. I'm not really sure. But basically, it means tool eater. That's what CT Ka means. And so the legend goes is that apparently a group of giant red-headed, possibly cannibals, would get into conflict with the native Peyote tribe. And the legend goes that they would ride on little tool rafts, which tool is basically a kind of water plant. No one really knows if this was really based off an actual tribe in the area or not, but it's still interesting nonetheless, as there are illustrations of the supposed legend in the Lovelock Cave in Nevada. So yeah, pretty interesting first entry. Insert Christian lore about Nephilim giants, but that seems to be a rather fan favorite amongst wendigoon lovers. Anyway, moving on. Next we have the Tiber River Monster, and this is supposedly a strange river creature that washed up on shore in 1496 after a flood. Now the story originates from the Augsburg Book of Miracles written in the 1500s, and the Augsburg Book of Miracles is pretty much a German manuscript with different illustrations talking about different folklore creatures and stories, and some of them originate even from the Old Testament times. Yeah, not too much is known that I could find about this book, but interesting bit of river monster lore I thought I should throw in there. The Bandage Man of Cannon Beach is probably one of the most famous Oregon ghost stories, and basically the story goes that a lumberjack or logger was injured while working, and when the ambulance came and picked him up, they wrapped him in bandages, and on the way to the hospital, the car fell victim to a landslide and they all perished. And the ghost kind of looks how you would imagine. The dude is all very bloodied and bandaged and very spooky looking. And the story originates sometime in the 1950s or 60s when they first started popping up. But the most funny thing I noted about this ghost was that it gave me a real campy 80s horror movie vibe, because apparently he likes to harass teenagers in parked cars, you know, near the forests of, you know, Cannon Beach. And, you know, I thought it was kind of funny reading that. Sheep Squatch, otherwise known as the White Thing, is an Appalachian cryptid that was first spotted in West Virginia in multiple different counties in the mid-1990s. Now, Sheep Squatch has been described as having just straight white wool fur, and is basically how you would imagine him, a giant sheep-like creature. And apparently he has been known to smell like sulfur, so I guess that implies he's you know, kind of a demon. The Le Luyon, I hope I pronounced that right, or the Ghost of Malais, is a ghost that supposedly haunts the forest of, well, Malais in Switzerland, and has been described as a somewhat tall humanoid figure wearing a boiler suit and a gas mask. And just reading the description of this ghost and the urban legend around him, he sounds like just a dude wearing like a Michael Myers, you know, coverall suit and a gas mask who just happens to be a little tall. Like at least that's what the story sounded like to me. But yeah, I thought it was kind of a bland entry. Crabzilla is, well, basically just a satellite image of supposedly a large 50-foot crustacean lurking in the murky waters of Whitstable, Kent in England. This one, I don't know how to say this. It's probably not real. I've seen many crazy satellite images like this that were passed off as a new cryptid, but still, a giant crab like in Dark Souls 3 or something would be very terrifying, so I hope this isn't real, you know? The Alaskan White Death, or the Alaskan Tiger, is supposedly a large feline creature that inhabits the swampy areas in Paxton, Alaska, and supposedly it likes to hunt humans, and after every human it kills, a new stripe appears on its back. So yeah, this sounds like a legendary animal I would hunt in like Red Dead 2, but yeah, very freaky nonetheless. The Black Flash, or the Provincetown Phantom, or the Devil of the Dunes, was a creature that harassed many different people and children in Provincetown, Massachusetts in 1939. And by the description of this creature, it sounds like someone was describing basically the Flash from DC, but like as a large, gangly creature, almost like an evil Flash. But yeah, this story reminded me of the Spring Heel Jack, England urban legend, and yeah, I thought it was pretty cool reading it, but it sounds kind of goofy. Like the description I read of it just kind of sounded like a child wrote it, but then again, apparently most of the witnesses of this creature were children, as it would harass them and jump at them and laugh maniacally. So yeah, just a silly little guy, a real goofy goober. The Derrida Roadkill was a strange carcass that was found by a woman named Barbara Mullins in Louisiana on Highway 12, and the carcass was described as a large, fully grown Saint Bernard, like in terms of size, and it was covered in brown fur and apparently very simian in appearance, so like an ape or like a Bigfoot. Yeah, there's not really too much to describe this entry, as it's pretty much was just a carcass that was found, and could have been a deformed dog, could have been anything, or I don't know. I've seen a few different news stories about this, finding weird bodies like this. So anyway, moving on. The Airborne Frogman, or the Coney Island Monster, is a rather goofy cryptid that was described in the summer of 1880 in New York City, you know, on Coney Island. And let me just read the description of this cryptid. So people describe this creature as flying like 1,000 feet above the water, and they described him as having a man's body attached to bat's wings and improved frog legs. The creature was said to wear a cruel expression. I don't know what was in the water that summer in Coney Island, but that sounds like your average New York resident, you know? Sorry, nothing beats the Loveland Frogman in my mind, okay? This airborne frogman is an imposter, all right? The Devil's Hole tumor seal was a crazy story from a caller who called into the Coast to Coast AM radio station, which if you don't recognize that name, you might recognize it for the Area 51 call that it was famous for. But yeah, so apparently this radio station has a lot of crazy callers. Anyway, the story goes that a man named Mel Waters discovered a giant hole on his property that he nicknamed the Devil's Hole. And basically it was a giant bottomless pit that had strange vibrations and sounds coming from it. And for some reason he decided to one day lower a crate with a live sheep in it down into the hole. And apparently when they did this, the sheep was, you know, freaking out and screeched and died basically because it was apparently cooked alive when they pulled it back up. And I'm not even getting to the craziest part of the story yet, but the fact that a guy would even think to do that for a giant pit in his yard instead of calling, like, I don't know, a scientist or a geological surveyor, anything. But anyway, so apparently when they rolled up the sheep back out of the pit, it had a strange gelatinous glob creature tumor that was inside of it, like almost like it was pregnant. And when they opened it up and were looking at this creature, apparently it had human-like eyes, and it had nodded at them and was alive. And just as when they're kind of starting to come to grips with the situation, the creature dove back into the pit and got away. So they then proceeded to throw the body of the sheep back down there with it and cover up the hole. That is all I have heard of this story. That is the basic synopsis of the story. And yeah, I would look more into the story yourself too, because just reading it was kind of crazy. It was pretty gnarly. The Iranian-toothed bird was a carcass that was discovered by the IRNA, and basically they described it as having a long beak, snout thing, and feathers, and 2 bird-like legs, but they couldn't really identify what exactly this creature was. So, yes, even Iran has their own strange cryptids, so yeah, watch out. The wood devils are a race of Sasquatch-like humanoids that roam the forest of New Hampshire. And they're basically like a generic Sasquatch creature, except they're described as having all gray fur and being very tall. And apparently the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, the BFRO, I totally forgot that was a thing, described them as very elusive and nimble, and if it cannot hide, it will stand perfectly still until it knows a person can see it. So yeah, have fun with that. The Lizard Man of Bishopville, or the Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp, is a staple in Lee County, South Carolina folklore, and the community apparently really plays up their folklore and sells Lizard Man merch and t-shirts and all that. But it was first sighted in the 1980s and described as being around 7 feet tall, having 3 fingers, red eyes, lizard skin, and snake-like scales. So yeah, basically a reptilian, basically, is what South Carolina is dealing with, what it sounds like. But yeah, pretty fun entry. I like it when towns kind of play into their whole urban legends and cryptids and folklore and all that. It makes it more fun, you know, to visit. The prime hook swamp creature was a strange small creature that was spotted in Delaware and was described as being around 2.5 to 3 feet tall, having a flat, puggish face and small ears, and looking to weigh only about 30 pounds. So kind of the size of like a small dog. And there's only 1 or 2 accounts of this creature ever being described, the first one being in 2007, and it's since become like a nice little urban legend in the Prime Hook National Wildlife Refuge near where it was spotted. The Cayuga Waterfront Trail alien is just a Google Earth picture showing a alien or demonic face under a bridge near Ithaca, New York. Kind of creepy, but there's many different explanations for it, so kind of a cryptid, not really, I don't know. The Wallowa Lake freshwater crustaceans is yet another classic Oregon urban legend, and this one's rather straightforward. They're basically just giant crustaceans or crabs that are said to inhabit the Wallowa Lake area, and I just think it'd be funny because I've never been to Oregon, and if I were to actually go there and, like I mentioned earlier, see like a giant Dark Souls 3-esque giant crab, I think that would be pretty fun, so I need to go there. Beast of Brassknocker Hill is a large mysterious creature said to inhabit Brassknocker Hill near the city of Bath, England, and even made headlines in 1979 in a Holland newspaper with a title reading, Beast of Bath Destroys British Wood. Ooh. The beast is described as being very bear-like and having giant Dracula-like teeth and white rings around its eyes, and it's speculated that it's basically a speckled sloth or a bear. And the funniest thing reading about this is apparently not only did it terrorize the local populace, but apparently it can eat trees with its large, Dracula teeth. A crazy critter, a bald mountain, was an insect-like cryptid that was encountered by many different shocked motorists in 1974 near, Bald Mountain in Washington. And basically, they describe this creature as having a sort of weird neon-like green glow and was approximately horse-sized with tentacles and antenna. And yeah, it was basically like a giant bug, essentially. It was kind of like the description of it, at least to me. Funny enough, after these reports, basically the local Lewis County Sheriff's Department got involved, who was then visited by the Air Force, like armed guards from the Air Force, and the investigation was basically handed off to them. Now, whatever happened to the supposed crazy critter, nobody really knows because no one heard or saw anything about it ever since then, so maybe it was a Men in Black situation. The Alula killer whale is an oceanic cryptid that resembles a sepia brown orca, and many people just chalk up the sightings to be a mutation or a misidentification of an already existing whale species, but some people believe that it might just be a new whale species that is yet to be identified. The Chetiskar spaceman is not really a cryptid, but more of an archaeological discovery of a 10,000-year-old rock painting depicting aliens and UFOs in the Charama region of India. This is more just like a kind of a cool like archaeological thing, kind of like something I'd see on Ancient Aliens maybe, but yeah, anyway, moving on. I know I'm changing hats. This hat is like too small for me, so Smoky Mountains hat, there you go. I mean, this one kind of fits the vibe, so yeah, we'll rock it. The Arizona Demon is a picture of a supposed giant winged demon creature in Arizona taken by Facebook user Richard Christensen. I see photos like this on Facebook pretty often, so think of this what you will. The Donkey Lady of San Antonio is a cryptid / urban legend from San Antonio, Texas, about a lady who is part woman, part donkey. Now, most of the sightings were chalked up to misidentified domesticated donkeys, but there are also many different variations of her origin story. Like some say she's a burn victim, others say that she's just the spirit of a lady who drowned after her pet donkey died or drowned with her. But regardless, she is said to inhabit the Donkey Lady Bridge built in 1917 in San Antonio. The Eureka monster is kind of a dinosaur-like bird creature said to inhabit the Atacama Desert in Chile in South America. Now, the variations of description of this creature kind of sound like a combination of a kangaroo and a dromaeosaur, but it's basically said to be around like a 6 foot tall, dinosaur bird-like creature. But like I said, there are many different variations of the exact description of this creature. Interesting fact, this creature was even talked about on the show Destination Truth, so pretty cool. The ghostly scarecrow of Chiang Rai is a supposed alien creature that was sighted in Thailand in 2005 and was seen frolicking in rural Thailand rice fields. The alien is described as having yellow skin, being very short, having no arms, pointed feet, and reported to be able to hover above the air and even attempts to communicate with humans by nodding in response to questions and answers. It is said to have huge red eyes and a tiny mouth. Witnesses say it has a large head and large ears as well. The Yucca-Man are a race of Sasquatch-like humanoids that are said to be over 10 feet tall and inhabit the areas of Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada. They're just described as being a lot less hairy than a typical Sasquatch. And funny enough, most of the sightings comes from people near government facilities and Marines describing these creatures as being pretty playful and like they play pranks, and most of the stories were from the 70s and 80s. The Kemerovo creature is a pretty straightforward cryptid. It's basically just a Russian Sasquatch, as it's a unknown hairy humanoid creature that was sighted in Kemerovo, Russia. So yeah, there's not too much in-depth lore that I can really find about this one. The Kinderhook blob was an unknown floating blob creature that was sighted in the 1960s in New York. Now, most of the people who claim to have sighted this blob are just terrified of its appearance. And funny enough, there's even like recent sightings as of 2017, and the most recent one described the blob as more of like a sheet ghost, but again, there's many different conflicting reports of a lot of cryptids like this. The Napa Valley Rebobs is said to inhabit the small Napa Valley town in California, and this area is most famous for having a doomsday shelter for the president in case of like a biological or like apocalyptic attack. And the Napa Valley Rebobs is basically described as half monkey, half robot creatures that like haunt that road that lead to that doomsday shelter. And they're basically described as like the flying monkeys from The Wizard of Oz. That's the best way I can describe them. The Hawkesbury River monster is, well, a river monster cryptid that's described as a serpent very similar to that of Nessie. And the actual like native folklore name form is the Mirurella, which means giant water serpent. And besides the ancient native folklore, the first actual written accounts of this creature date back to 1924. Now, sightings of this creature have been noted as being all across the river from the west end to the east end. So many different areas and people have described seeing a sort of water serpent-like creature that matches the description of this. So pretty interesting cryptid. Manta Man is a flying humanoid cryptid that was spotted in northern Chile. And the reason it's called Manta Man is because two of its limbs are almost like manta ray like membranes attached to its body that it uses, you know, like wings to fly. And well, this creature has been described as being very aggressive and mean. The creature described as like devouring dogs, which I was like, first read that, I do like a double take. I was like, what? Like, what do you mean devours dogs? Now, believers speculate that it might be a, you know, descendant of a type of dinosaur or even an alien. So yeah, pretty unique cryptid. The Medford Schmooze was basically a cryptid sighting that occurred in the summer of 1953 in Medford, Oregon. And they're basically described as kind of like peanut-shaped creatures that can float and have no real discernible features like arms or legs or anything. Imagine like Mr. Peanut, but without any like limbs or a proper face. And apparently the name for these creatures came from a old Little Abner comic strip, and because they look like the schmooze in that comic, I guess. So yeah, pretty funny. The Mermanx creature, or the Russian porch yeti, is pretty straightforward. It's a white yeti looking creature that was sighted in Murmansk, Russia in 2011. Now, many people just chalk this up to being a hoax, like a dude wearing a yeti costume, so think of that what you will. Monica is a wildcat marten hybrid that comes from Cantabrian mythology, and apparently, according to the legend, the animal is very friendly and will bring luck to men who catch it. And apparently it is very aggressive towards women, so it is a misogynist cat creature. But basically, the Monica is supposed to be very rare, and let me read this out for you how they're created or born. So, being born during spring once every 11 years from the cross of a male wildcat and a female marten. Also, the article added that it will sometimes suck the blood from lambs and children. It just threw that in there like a little tiny little tidbit. Next we have the Toronto Tunnel Monster, and basically how the story goes that the city of Toronto originally had various different waterways and streams, and as the city grew, they started to build over them, so that's how the city has an underground network of waterways that it does today. And here that just kind of reminded me of the Paris catacombs, but anyway, the Algonquin tribes of Canada spoke of hairy-like humanoid creatures that would inhabit these waterways before they were supposedly hidden away from the public in 1978. And funny enough, this description kind of matches the story of the Memagwesi, which is a part of Algonquin mythology. Basically, they're small little water spirit creatures that inhabit streams and waterways. So it kind of plays into native mythology on top of just urban legends in general. So pretty cool entry in Crypted. The Rochester rat dog is a strange, hairless, giant rat cryptid that has been described by a woman named Gwen Bird in Rochester, New York. Now, the stories and description of this creature just kind of remind me of a generic large New York rat, because they do get pretty big up there. So yeah, moving on. Giant space brains of Palos Verdes, or the Dapple Gray Lane encounter, is a very strange alien encounter that happened on the night of August 17th, 1971. Basically, the story goes is that two Palos Verdes residents, Peter Rodriguez and John Hodges, encountered these strange brain-looking alien creatures that were described as bluish in color and shrouded in a strange localized vapor. I don't know if anyone remembers the game War of the Monsters, but the description reminded me of the brain-looking aliens in that, or just the aliens from Mars Attacks. But anyway, rather interesting alien encounter stories. I always like reading about different crazy alien encounters because some get pretty wacky. The Butler Gargoyle is a kind of Mothman-like creature that was supposedly sighted in 1993, and it's been described as around 7 to 8 feet tall and described as having a bicycle helmet-like head and pale, clammy, grayish skin, so kind of like a gargoyle. Kind of like, this seems like a Mothman ripoff to me, but I don't know too much of the in-depth lore of this creature, so maybe I'm selling him short, I don't know. The Varberg Fortress moat monster requires a little bit of history backstory to properly explain this, but apparently in the year 1300 CE, a fortress was built called Varberg Fortress by Count Nielsen as protection against a Danish king who had declared him to be an outlaw. Now, Varberg is a coastal town south of Gothenburg in Sweden, and apparently the creepy aspect of this fortress is that it is said that the moat surrounding it is said to be inhabited by a monster. Yes, that's right. In 2006, 2 witnesses claimed to see a creature emerge from the murky waters of the moat and devour a duck and then retreat back into the water. And it was described as brown and furless. So kind of vague description, but so creepy nonetheless. Yeah, imagine being a Swedish, like medieval knight and trying to attack that fortress and you fall into the moat and then you just see a pair of eyes staring back at you in the water. Black-eyed child of Cannock Chase. Now I just want to clarify, this is completely different than black-eyed children. That's a whole nother, urban legend. This just happened to sound kind of similar, but they're totally different. Yes, this cryptid happens to be a small girl with black eyes sighted around Cannock Chase in England. And apparently this area in England is known for paranormal activity, as it's also the home of another cryptid called the Pigman. Didn't know that was a thing. And also apparently has alien sightings around that area, but anyway. Now, the black-eyed child is said to be a victim of a Teferia, hope I pronounced that right, outbreak during the 1800s. And interesting enough, a ghost show called Haunted Finders claimed to successfully capture evidence of the black-eyed child when they were doing a segment of their show there. So sure they did, buddy, but still just an interesting little tidbit I wanted to throw in there. Cameron Village sewer blob are supposedly the strange looking pulsating blob creatures that can inhabit the sewers of Cameron Village in North Carolina. And funny enough, when I was reading about this, apparently there is a very in-depth, detailed, scientific explanation of these creatures. Apparently there's one of 2 possibilities. They are possibly a colony of bryozoans, which are small animals like Hydra that live together in colonies and they stick out their tentacles to feed, or possibly clumps of annelid worms. So yeah, for my North Carolina residents, apparently that's what's in your sewers. Ew. Tuscumbia space penguins. Okay, now brace yourselves. This story is a bit wacky. Okay, basically, before I begin, Tuscumbia space penguins, or how they sound, they're basically green little space penguins. So yeah, pretty cute. So I'll recommend you reading the story yourself because this is just a basic synopsis. But basically, in the winter of 1967, a farmer named Claude Edwards woke up to, attend to his farm in Tuscumbia, Missouri, when he had a strange encounter with a bunch of green little space penguins. And according to people who knew Edwards, they say he is not the kind who would make up a story like this. He's pretty no nonsense, no sense of humor kind of guy. So the story is it's just a little wacky, okay? But I'm surprised these space penguins are not more well known because they seem very marketable. I can see them having how Bigfoot is so popular. I can see them having little Tuscumbia space penguin plushies and signs. I don't know why they aren't as popular as Bigfoot or Nessie or something. But anyway, moving on. I should start a space penguin fan club. But anyway, on to the next one. Sugar Bundle is apparently a strange plant-like bundle-looking creature that was sighted by 2 armed guards on a sugarcane plantation in Cuba in 1915. And basically, when the guards are on patrol, they encounter this little alien or cryptid-like creature. And even though the testimonies of this story are very few and far between and very scant in detail, still a pretty interesting story that I was surprised to see in this list. You don't really see many cryptid stories coming from Cuba, but I digress. The Santiago River Frogman is a rather interesting one, as it kind of comes from Aztec mythology. So basically, the Aztecs venerated taloques, or rain dwarves, as servants that were subservient to an ancient rain deity called Tlaloc. Hope I pronounced both of those names right. But both of them were described as having reptilian and amphibian-like qualities. And supposedly there have been sightings, like from the 1960s, that kind of describe both the god and the little rain dwarf creatures as, residing in the Santiago area. So yeah, pretty interesting. My Mexican viewers, can you elaborate more on this? Because I would like to know more about the local lore of this. The Matronovac tree skinner is a bit of Eastern European folklore, and basically it's like an Eastern or Central European Bigfoot, basically, and it's called the tree skinner or tree trembler because of how big it is, and its stomps can, like tremble trees in the forest. But it's basically, the description matches that of like a generic Bigfoot or Yeti-like creature. Just interesting fact, because I like to see all the different Bigfoot variations in different places around the world. I feel like almost every location or region of the world has their own like kind of Bigfoot-esque stories, so interesting to see. The temporary wolfman is kind of interesting because it doesn't describe like one specific creature. It pretty much describes a variation of a series of different wolfman, hairy humanoid creatures, because in the area of Tipperary and Osiri in Ireland, apparently they're just known for having different, wild men stories and werewolf-like creatures. But the funniest one was like a more modern day description of a humanoid creature like this is like encounter. Apparently there was a man with a bear's head in 2021, and a man attempted to talk to the creature, and it rudely said, "Don't talk to me." Why is that? Why is that so funny to me? Like, you counter like a werewolf, man-bear, pig creature, and your first instinct is to talk to it, and it says, "Don't talk to me." Look, some of these stories are wacky, man. Oh my god. Let's continue on. The Chinese beach humanoid. So, at some undisclosed beach in China in 2018, apparently people found this strange-looking spongy humanoid thing that floated up on the beach. To me, it can possibly be a puppet or just a giant sponge. Still an interesting looking video because it's weird to look at, but anyway. The Wunan toads are giant albino-like toad creatures that are said to inhabit the obscure, lesser populated area of the Hubei province in China. And the description is pretty straightforward. They're giant albino toads, and they're also been noted as being aggressive. So kind of matches up for a toad. Toads can be pretty aggressive, and if one's that big, it'll probably eat you. If it's big enough, because toads are crazy like that, man. David Huggins Crescent encounter. So this is an alien encounter story, and how should I put this? Apparently a man named David Huggins, who claims to have been encountering aliens since the age of 8. Okay, dude. Claimed to have an alien encounter with an alien named Crescent, and it was a very close encounter, if you know what I'm saying. He snoo-snooed an alien, okay? Shouldn't be that big of a surprise in this channel. I made a video talking about a similar alien story coming from Brazil, but yeah, this one, his descriptions were very in-depth. Apparently the alien has jet black hair, looks, humanoid and resembles kind of like a, gray alien sort of. But she also apparently had very large bazongas, according to David. So David is living that Mass Effect roleplay IRL, man. He is. Let's just move on. This guy. Let's move on. Oh, here we have another goofy one. The telepathic football is a strange cryptid encounter reported in Calama, Chile in 2002. I'm just gonna read the description of what they described this creature to look like. Apparently its head was like one of a large dog, and it had a flat nose like a bulldog. Its eyes were slanted and pale red in color, and apparently it would like turn its head from side to side like small lizards do. So yeah, football. The Voronezh aliens is a strange Soviet alien encounter, whereas many alien encounters only have 1 or 2 people witnessing the event, but apparently several dozen people witnessed this event. I need to do the story a little bit of justice, so I'm going to go into a little bit of the details of the story. So the city of Voronezh in Russia, it's about 300 miles from Moscow. It's a very populated industrial urban area. So not an area typically associated with a lot of alien encounters, because those are usually more rural, like village type areas. So on September 27th, 1989 at around 6:30 p.m., apparently a strange glowing red UFO landed in a Russian park, and a group of 3-eyed aliens emerged from it. So the park was named Levo Berezhny's Park. God damn it, Levo Berezhny's Park. Apparently, when the UFO landed, when the group of aliens emerged from it, they jumped a group of teens and attacked them. So it was like a UFO extraterrestrial drive-by. And then as quick as they came, they disappeared, then left in their UFO. Apparently several dozen people witnessed this, apparently, and I think that was a probably the most wacky, not the most, but one of the wackiest UFO stories I've heard, because how often that'd be like somewhere like Detroit that would happen, or Boston, like a UFO lands, attacks group of teens and leaves. Like, that, who was gonna believe that? It never happened. So this story is wacky. I didn't expect it to be like in a major city. So the Tatzel worm, or the stole worm, actually has a lot of in-depth lore to this, but the story originates from the Alpine region in South Central Europe, but there are many different variations and sighting of this supposed creature in all over Europe. There's crazy anecdotes and encounters of it, but basically the creature, it looks like, has like a serpent body and like the upper body head of like a cat or feline. And in some stories, it's claimed to be venomous or have like venomous breath. Basically, in all the stories, it's described as being pretty aggressive. It can attack people, but it has many different regional names because apparently there are stories of a similar creature all over Europe. Some names include the Bergstutz, the spring worm, the Pratzel worm, and in French, the Arasis. Close to Arrakis, like in Dune, anyway. But yeah, so the Tatzel worm is a very in-depth staple of European folklore, so yeah, I kind of like this one. Chinese alien in the woods. So this video is recorded by a French tourist in China, and I think it's better if I just show you the video because I can't really do it justice by just describing it. The Bear's Ears Visitor Center creature. So this one is another Google Earth / Street View picture of supposed a floppy armed creature in Utah. Now to me, this critter looks like a statue. So I'm gonna leave it at that. Please prove me wrong. I would like to know if I'm wrong. The Alley Peru creature. This is another classic cryptid sighting YouTube video, but in Peru, it basically in the dark alley, they see this strange cryptid creature, and the person in the video is just shouting like generic stuff like, "Oh, what is that? Oh my god!" And yeah, pretty bland entry because I couldn't really find anything else beyond the original video about this creature. So, moving on. Google Maps Russian Forest Bigfoot, and we're going back to Russia with this one. So apparently, this is a Google Maps image of supposedly a Bigfoot roaming in a Russian forest. So, man, what is with Russia in this video? They have a lot of wacky stories this time. Alicia Stodart's Tooth Fairy encounter. So apparently this is an image and video out of England that shows a winged creature that many are labeling as the Tooth Fairy of a legend, or just a fairy in general. So for all my Tooth Fairy true believers out there, this is your time to shine. But interesting fact, this article I found is on the Coast to Coast AM website, which is, you know, the radio show that was famous for having the Area 51 collar and the Devil's Pit collar. But yeah, apparently this website and radio station is just making cameos all throughout this video this time. The Stewart Hotel zombie, or the Headless Man, is out of Liverpool, England, where a man was supposedly just browsing through Google Street View looking for a nice place for fish and chips, and saw a headless man zombie guy in the window of the Stewart Hotel. And apparently in Liverpool, I found this out, there are approximately 150 supposed haunted pubs there, and that just happens to be one of them. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So this intro, I'm not really sure why it's even on the list, but the 22 News Storm Team coverage at the X in Springfield. So this is clearly a dude in a ghillie suit walking past like a news camera. I don't even know why this is even on the iceberg. But anyway, moving on. The 1947 kaiju scare, or supposedly Gojira's origin story. So I just want to read the news article for you guys, because this is apparently a epic prank that a American radio station pulled in Japan in 1947. Army's joke broadcast scares Americans in Britons. Tokyo, May 28th. An Army radio station described for a gag today a battle between American soldiers and a 20-foot sea monster in the streets of Tokyo. The description was so vivid that General Douglas MacArthur was reported to have been fooled, as well as thousands of Americans and Britons. For more than 3 hours, the telephones of station WVTR, Far East Network, and Army agencies were clogged with telephone calls from Americans and Britons, some of whom were frankly frightened. According to a member of the station's staff, one caller was General MacArthur. New York Times, May 29th, 1947. Now, supposedly this story was the inspiration for Godzilla or Gojira, so yeah, I like that entry. It's called a little trolling. We do a little trolling. Hachiville is supposedly a mythical village of dwarves out of Waukesha County, Wisconsin, and supposedly near Mystic Drive in Muskego there is a dwarf village where, you know, they have all their houses built to size and their cute little gnome hats running around, and, you know, I love gnomes and dwarves, so I really like the story. It's kind of cute. But what's not cute is the little addition to the story. Apparently, in the urban legend, how it goes, there is an old man with albinism who lives near Hachiville. And if people trespass there and are unwelcome there, he will cut their legs off at the knee. So they're forced to live life as a dwarf. That part is not that cute, but whatever. Giant shrimp in the laundry room. So this is kind of a goofy little story. But anyway, in 1948 in Bremerton, Washington, a local resident there named Virginia Staples said to have encountered a giant shrimp that was in a hole in the wall in the basement of the laundry room she was using there. Okay, she must have been smoking crack or something, man. I don't know, but yeah. So this is what Drake and Josh and the really big shrimp was really about. Good to know. Black Star penguins, man, again with the penguins. But anyway, in 1995, two teenagers supposedly encountered these 2 feet tall black penguin-looking creatures waddling in unison down a hill while they're on a hunting trip. So pretty fun, okay? I would have been awestruck. My jaw would have literally unhinged my face and fell to the floor. Penguin little alien creatures are just so cute, man. We need those kind of stories more often. Uplifting. The Bremen Troll Bridge. Now, this is kind of a classic bridge troll story, but apparently in Bremen, Indiana, there is a small bridge that is said to be the home of a troll who lives underneath it. And apparently if you drive there and park your car on top of the bridge and wait a little while, that summons the troll, and he is known to attack people in their car or throw things at them while they're in their car or just wandering around the bridge area. Unfortunately, he has no riddles to ask, so I don't think there's any way to really combat this troll, but he's supposedly around 7 to 8 feet tall. The Bucks County fetus, or the spawn from hell, is basically a fetus-looking carcass that was found in 1990 by a witness only known as HT. And they described the fetus having abnormally muscular arms, being about the size of a 1-year-old infant, having a maniacal grin and like soulless, empty eyes. So kind of creepy. Most people claim this story to be a hoax, or if it wasn't, it was some sort of deformed baby creature, but yeah, it was just kind of gross looking at it, so let's move on. The Fregosa Jellyman was a cryptid encounter that occurred in 1965 in the rural village of Fregosa near the border of Spain and Portugal. Siblings Juan and Isabel Dominguez were heading home carrying a basket of peaches when they encountered some strange 6-foot-tall humanoid-looking gelatinous translucent creature that was pacing back and forth near where their church is at. This story is kind of pretty creepy when I was reading it, I guess because it was like in the middle of the night, dark when I read it, but just imagine like a weird jelly man coming towards me just I don't know, man. I would not want to eat Smuckers for a while after that. So Angelo D'Ambrose Electric Goblinoids encounter, that name sounds like the name of like an indie rock band or something, but anyway, it was an cryptid encounter experienced by Angelo D'Ambrose in Italy in 1978. Angelo was a 61-year-old man encountering 2 strange creatures who were approximately 4 feet tall, and he described them as these weird gangly looking, pointed eared, white eye, pear-shaped head, goblin looking creatures, with their skin being very yellowish, and apparently they were also wearing dark overalls that didn't fit them properly, and he described them having very large hands and feet in proportion to their body. So just a couple silly little guys he just encountered, you know, as you do. As far as I know, this is the only encounter ever recorded of these weird goblinoid creatures, so who knows, maybe they'll make a comeback one day. The Farmersville Green Man is a very Texas-style story, and you'll find out why in a second. But basically, in Farmersville, Texas, in 1913, a family came outside to see their 2 dogs freaking out and barking and cornering this strange little green alien man who they described as looking as if they were made of rubber. But anyway, their dogs had cornered this little alien man and proceeded to tear him to shreds, so they killed him. And they said the only evidence of him left was a small, shredded, miniature, like human remains, basically. A tiny little body, basically. And I just imagined in my head the little tiny Men in Black alien from the first movie, so yeah, that's the best way I can describe him. Poor little guy. He was traveling the cosmos, only to be eaten by Lassie and Cujo when he came to Earth, so R.I.P. The Newport Stumps was a 1966 Oregon alien encounter by a young 16-year-old girl named Kathy Reeves and one of her friends. The 2 girls described these 3 tree stump-looking beings who were varying in color. And interesting fact, after this encounter, apparently there were supposedly 5 other witnesses that described seeing a similar creature like later on in the year. And apparently this area in Oregon had many different UFO and paranormal activity reports at the time, so take of that what you will, I guess. The Cisco Grove robots was an extraterrestrial encounter reported by Donald Troom in 1964 in California. Donald was on a hunting trip with him and a couple of his friends, but during this trip, he was attacked by a couple of robot-looking aliens, and he was defending himself from them, and he even climbed up in a tree to try to get away from them, but apparently one of the robots shot like a white vapor up near his face, and it made him pass out. And I believe when he woke up, they were gone. So there was no real trace of the attack other than his encounter and story. But yeah, still pretty vividly described event. So I thought it was pretty interesting. I hope I pronounced this right. The Diyarbakir Jinn was a strange flying creature that was caught on security cam footage in Turkey in 2016. And most people just chalk this up to being like a drone of some sort, you know, flying across the camera. But some diehard believers actually believe it was some sort of supernatural entity, or perhaps even a jinn. For those who don't know, a jinn is kind of like a demon in Islam, so that's what some people believed it to be. So the Uno Port Head replacement alien. Okay, this story is kind of wacky, so I'm gonna read out some details of it for you. So on September 3rd, 1974, a man known as Mr. F had to deliver a load of furniture bound for Takamatsu City in Kagawa, Japan. And during this trip, Mr. F decided to stop for some udon noodles. While he was stopped, he claimed to see a UFO whiz and land nearby him, and then he proceeded to fall unconscious. And when Mr. F woke up, he claimed to see a weird alien sitting in his passenger seat of his car. He described the alien as having a face that resembled a mask with 2 eyes, no other features, and having hair that fell to her shoulders, and being around 5'3". Oh yeah, and she spoke in a mechanical, like robotic voice, and also apparently had like an antenna like coming out of her head. And get this, the alien said, I want you to replace my head. Yeah, that's what the alien told him. And obviously Mr. F said, well, how? So the alien said, oh, I need you to press like 3 buttons, like on my chest. and so he did it. And then her head popped off, and then he was then told to press the buttons in reverse order and then put a different head like back on her. And in the story, Mr. F said he had no idea how he got the other alien head. It just happened to be there. So yeah, the story was pretty wacky. Yeah, it feels like something I'd see like a manga or like an anime, not like an actual real life alien encounter. But anyway, moving on. The Felixstowe Fire Demon was a strange encounter that occurred in Felixstowe, England in 1965. The protagonists of this story are 25-year-old Jeffrey Maskey and his passengers Mavis Fordyce and Michael Johnson. And while they're all in the car, Johnson suddenly just got up and ran into the forest nearby, and when he came back later, he proceeded to explain what had happened to him. Johnson described how he felt compelled to move into the forest where he encountered a strange-looking creature that was engulfed in orange flames and had sloped large eyes. And once he encountered this creature, apparently Johnson blacked out and came to back at the car. So yeah, I guess he encountered Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle, I guess. The Black Swine of Hampstead Sewers is a kind of a weird Victorian era urban legend. Basically, the story goes that in the sewers of London, there exists a bunch of large pigs, basically like large pig monsters. And one day they're going to break out of the sewer and cause riots throughout the city and completely destroy it. Don't know how that got started, but apparently that is how the urban legend goes, that these giant pig creatures are gonna, I guess, come out of the sewers and eat people, I guess. So, this sounds like something I would tell like a child in the Victorian era London to not go playing in the sewers. I'll tell them there's like pig monsters down there. So this next entry, I don't know if I can like say it because yes, it has multiple meanings, but it's also counted as a slur, you know, a real negative connotation with it. So basically, I'm gonna call it a black blob creature that was encountered in 1961 in Kentucky. So yes, the phrase and name of the creature was originally used as a term for like a sticky situation, but obviously it got more popular in use as like a racial slur. So I'm just not gonna say it just to be safe because I'd rather YouTube not strike me down where I stand. So not much is known about this supposed sighting, but the faceless thing of Dahlonega basically was a faceless, hairy humanoid creature that was about the size of like a 4-year-old child. And it was seen walking across the road in the middle of the night heading towards a forest that was near a national park forest. So yeah, not really too much I could find about this encounter, but that would be kind of creepy to see if I saw like a child in the middle of the night that was wearing no clothes and had no face running into the woods. I would start to ask a few questions. The Boca Raton Slender Gumby. What a name. Basically, a man described seeing a Slenderman Gumby-esque looking creature at his parents' home in Boca Raton, Florida in 2017. And he claimed to have 3 sightings of it, and it was near like his parents' backyard. It was basically a gray, tall looking, well, slender Gumby looking creature, and like no sightings have been reported since then or by anyone else. I just thought the name was really funny. The Fayette County Dragon is a large, scaleless, 22-foot long dragon creature that has actually only ever been talked about by famous Pennsylvania researcher Stan Gordon. And he wrote it in an article on his UFO anomaly zone. Didn't know that was a thing. And also his book called Astonishing Encounters. So I guess if you just really like American cryptids and strange creature encounters, then that is the book for you. The Coleregion Pumpkinhead is, I don't even know really why this counts as a cryptid, but basically a 13-year-old boy in Pennsylvania described seeing a humanoid creature with a pumpkin on its head wearing a black suit. And reading this, to me, it just sounded like a dude dressed up like a jack-o'-lantern or like something like that. That's what it sounded like to me. I don't know if this even like really counts as a cryptid, but it's on the iceberg, so I had to talk about it. The Kentucky Horsewalker was a sighting of a semi-humanoid looking horse creature on a horse farm in Kentucky, and basically was described as kind of like having a horse-like head and no arms and walking upright and having very strange looking like legs. As far as I know, this is the only ever recorded sighting of this creature was by an unknown person going by MM. So I've never heard this before, so I don't know if anybody else has, but I thought the story was pretty interesting. So flashlight frogs are apparently as of right now, unrecognized species of frog that live in northern Cameroon in Africa. And the first recording I could find about them when I was reading about it was in 1997 by an English zoologist named Jonathan Downs. Apparently he was at an animal fair and he discovered a man having a booth and like showing off these flashlight frogs. Basically they're kind of like normal frogs, but they have a strange tip on their nose, like a snout, that can glow like a flashlight. So pretty crazy. I guess it's like, this is kind of like a semi-believable story. Like maybe there are species of frogs that have like, you know, bioluminescent glow on their face. I don't know. Like, I don't know, man. The Dublin Red Man, and no, it's not in Dublin, Ireland. It's actually in Dublin, Virginia, is a strange, hairless, red humanoid creature wearing no clothes that was encountered by a man only known as Paul in 2010 while he was deer hunting. And apparently when he came down from his deer stand during the trip, he was accosted by this strange red humanoid man who apparently also had a ginormous grin and strange, crooked, baseball card sized teeth, according to Paul. And I'm like, that like, so yeah, this hot dog looking man appeared to kind of mirror Paul's actions to some extent before basically like taking off in the woods somewhere else. So yeah, pretty weird story. The Prescott Little One was a strange humanoid encounter in Prescott, Arizona by a driver named Peter Petrisco and his girlfriend Becky. And basically this little creature sprinted towards their car when they were stopped, resting, let the radiator cool down. And they describe the creature as like being around 3 feet tall, having a chubby frame, being white and translucent, and also having skin being like that of roiling water. So Lodi's Blue Mystery Thing was actually an encounter that was written inside of the book, the 2005 travel book, Weird Wisconsin, Your Travel Guide to Wisconsin's Local Legends and Best Kept Secrets. According to the story, in 1999, a woman named Michelle was hiking back to her car in Lodi, Wisconsin, when she encountered this strange blue humanoid figure that was like flying above her. Now, experts who heard about the story chalk up the encounter as just a misidentified great blue heron, which is probably the most likely explanation, but some people even believe it to be a spirit or a wraith that flew above her. So this Ring camera eyes behind a flower pot video, to me it looks pretty edited, but I guess I can like kind of show you guys like part of the video. But basically it looks like there's just someone standing behind a flower pot staring at the Ring doorbell camera. Like I said, it looks like it can be easily faked or edited, but still it was kind of a creepy little video when I was clicking on it in the middle of the night. So this next entry is more of just straight up mythology rather than an actual sighting of a creature or anything like that. But Luisan, or Luiso, is basically the 7th child of Tau, which is an evil spirit in Guarani mythology, and Karana, which was a woman that Tau kidnapped, so it was their children together. And basically this 7th child is accursed and appears to be a giant dog-like creature and is very terrifying looking. Yeah, so they basically have like 7 cursed children together, Tau and Karana, according to the mythology. So yeah, this isn't really like I guess it's kind of a cryptid, but it's, like I said, it's pretty much just mythology. So the Pomperito sighting, this is just like an old like YouTube video that's like really shaky, grainy quality. I've seen like hundreds of them. I really don't know what creature this is like supposed to be, but it's just some strange creature that's seen nearby some kids who are playing soccer, or I'm sorry, football. The Miami Mall alien. But I don't know if you guys remember this, but a few months back there was that riot that took place in Bayside Marketplace, Miami, that was caused by a bunch of teenagers. When the police showed up, someone took a snapshot picture of what appeared to be a super tall gray alien that was in the crowd. And obviously it was deemed a hoax because there wasn't any other information corroborating this, and it was kind of just like a picture that just spread like wildfire on the internet. Now obviously the official story is there was no alien, so they say. I'm just kidding. I don't think there was an alien. The Cornish Owlman, or the Owlman of Monand Smith, is an urban legend in the Monand Smith area of England where supposedly there's this large owlman creature that haunts the area, kind of similar to the Mothman, so it's kind of like England's version of it. But basically there have been multiple sightings of a supposed large birdman or owlman creature in that area, and apparently the area is known for many strange going-ons and paranormal activity. Obviously the skeptics all say that the Owlman is just a misidentified great gray owl sightings, and people are just, have an overactive imagination and misidentified it. But what's the fun of that, okay? What is really the fun of that, man? Let England have their own Mothman, okay? I want to see some Owlman merch coming from you Englanders over there, okay? The Santa Isabel entity. Okay, so this is basically an 8-foot tall humanoid that was sighted in the Ica Renault car factory in Santa Isabel, Argentina in 1972. Now, apparently the story has a lot of detail to it that I can't really get into in just this Iceberg video, but the YouTuber Shrouded Hand made a pretty good video talking about this whole incident, so I highly suggest you go watch it because I thought it was pretty good. And if you want to learn more about it, then go for it. And finally, at long last, we have completed the obscure cryptids iceberg, everybody. Now, how many videos did I make on this? Like 4 or 5? I don't even remember anymore. The creators kept adding more stuff to it, like bonus levels and bonus tiers. I just kept having to add on to it and talk about it. But yeah, we finally did it for now, unless he decides to add a whole other tier one day. But I'm thinking of just combining all of the parts in just one long, like 2-3 hour long video. So I guess be on the lookout for that. But if I were to rate my favorite cryptid from this video, I would say I like the space penguins, okay? The green little space penguins. I mean, there's just something about them, you know? Reminds me of the penguins of Madagascar. I like that one. Now, if I decide my favorite cryptid from the whole iceberg, that's kind of a hard one, because do you know how many cryptids I talked about? Like 100 on this damn iceberg, man. I don't even remember all the ones I talked about. I'm a big fan of the Loveland Frog, man. That guy's a chill little guy. He's in his own lane. I've always liked him. I think out of the few icebergs I've done, the Obscure Cryptids one is probably the most fun, because it's always fun to look up these stories and talk about them and find out some wacky details about it. But as always, guys, just in case I don't see you, stay safe and have a good one. Goodbye.